Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the B&W Trailer Hitch Receiver here on a 2023 Hyundai Palisade. The Hyundai Palisade is a great family car. It has plenty of room for plenty of people with that third row seating, but doesn't have a lot of cargo space once you have all of your friends and family packed into the vehicle, so you're going to need a way to haul all your gear. The best way to do so is with a trailer hitch, so that way you can throw on that cargo carrier, that bike rack, or even tow a small trailer, as long as you also pick up some wiring so that way you can remain street legal. Now when you are trying to haul all that gear, there's a couple of things to consider. First one being your capacity. So if we are hauling a trailer, we want to make sure that we're staying within the capacity of not only the trailer hitch, but our vehicle as well. This specific trailer hitch is going to have a 6,000 pound gross towing weight capacity, which is probably going to be above what your Palisade can handle, so you will want to make sure that you're double checking that owner's manual and staying within the capacities of the vehicle. Now for the tongue weight, which is going to be the downward force on the inside of our receiver tube, and that is going to be those bike racks and those cargo carriers, that is going to be a 750 pound rating, which is pretty huge for this style vehicle and trailer hitch. So you're going to be able to haul a lot of gear back here, but you might want to keep in mind that now maybe that rear suspension is going to sag a little bit more, so you want to keep an eye on that, make sure that you're not going to bottom out and end up damaging your vehicle. Now when we also have those on, there's a couple of measurements that are going to be pretty important, because we don't want to hit a steep incline or decline and then have the shank or any other part of our accessory scraping the ground and getting damaged. So for our ground height, we typically want to see about 12 inches of clearance from the ground up to the top of the inside of our receiver tube. Now with ours, we're looking at right around 13 3/4. So that's well above that 12-inch mark, so we're not going to need to use an adapter. We should have enough ground clearance. If you are in that situation where you did need to use an adapter, you also are going to now be leveraging that weight further out. So that adapter is going to reduce the overall capacity by 50%. So you want to definitely keep that in mind when you're hauling things around. Now, a lot of accessories will also fold up so that you can kind of shorten up that overall length of your vehicle and the accessory. Well, every now and then you might run into an issue where maybe that folding accessory folds a little too close to the car and it can end up damaging your fascia or your liftgate. So the way to figure that out before you even go and actually physically test it would be to simply just measure from the center of your hitch pin hole out to the furthest point of your fascia, which is right here, right at the liftgate. And that is sitting at right around 3.5 to 4 inches. So what we would need to do is just go over to our accessory. We would look at the center of the hitch pin hole to the closest part of that accessory once it's folded up, and then we can measure that distance to see if we have enough clearance. Now our receiver tube opening is going to be 2 inches by 2 inches, which is pretty standard for most accessories out on the market. Now there are going to be some 1.25 inch accessories, and you can get a reducer sleeve here at eTrailer that'll slot into the hole here and help drop that down to that 1.25 inch sizing without reducing your capacity. One other thing that you're going to want to pick up as well is a hitch pin and clip, because it's not going to be included with your trailer hitch. I like to go with one that's going to be anti-rattle and also locking, so that way I don't have to worry about my cargo shifting or rattling around and getting damaged while it's on the back of my vehicle if I'm going over a rough terrain, or somebody taking off with it because I didn't have a lock and someone could easily just come over and pop the pin and then take off with my accessory. Now if we're going to be towing a trailer, safety chains are also going to be a must. So if we take a look with our tow loops, it's a pretty tall slotted section here. Gives us plenty of room for our S-hook to go on either way. No problems there, no bind ups. Now with the larger clevis style, that one's also kind of sitting on there real nice. I'm not really getting bound up. See if we can hit the other way. Yep, no problem. So with this specific tow loop set here, you're not going to really have an issue. Now as far as installation goes, every single trailer hitch for the Hyundai Palisade is super easy to install. Honestly, there's only just very minor differences between each brand. A little bit in terms of the finish, just the overall design, and then also your tow loops. But for the most part, every single hitch that you're going to get is going to have that hidden cross tube with just the receiver tube poking out below here. So it's a super easy install, because you're just popping 4 bolts in horizontally, 4 bolts in vertically, and then you're honestly good to go. The only thing you really need specialty-wise is just a torque wrench, so that way you can torque each one of your bolts down to the proper spec. So if you don't have one of those, definitely feel free to pick one up here at eTrailer, or you can use our dealer locator and find a shop near you to get it professionally installed, and they'll also have that torque wrench to get it torqued down for you. Now, if you're wanting to do this yourself and you have that torque wrench, stick around and I'll walk through the process. Starting off our install, I've already lowered our spare tire. I've got that kind of just hung up there to keep it out of the way. I'm going to now take a cam strap and I'm going to run it from one coil spring over to the other. And what that's going to do is help provide support for our exhaust, because we're going to be removing the rubber isolators. There's going to be 3 of them, one right back here. There's one right by our passenger side rear tire, and then another one right at the end of our exhaust right here. So what I'm going to do is spray those down with a little bit of silicone lubricant, help them transition off just a little bit easier. And then you can either grab a pry bar, or in our case we have a specific tool for removing rubber isolators, and it's just a little prong with a flat piece so that we have something to kind of press against. So we'll sit here and pop each one of these off. And then our exhaust is going to rest on our cam strap. Now over on our driver's side, we're going to have this plastic cover here, and this is going to need to come down. It's going to have 3 push pins and then 2 plastic nuts that are kind of up there. So I'm going to use a 14mm socket with an extension. And with those plastic nuts, you kind of have to also apply a little bit of pressure. So I would honestly start by pulling out these 3 push pins first, so that way you don't have it potentially pop back up into place once you already have it out. And then kind of just pry on it a little bit, not like a ton of pressure or anything, just enough to keep it nice and firm. As you twist that down, it should start working its way off. There we go, and we'll set this aside. Now on both the passenger and driver side frame rail, you're going to have 2 vertical holes, and those are going to have weld nuts in them. We're going to clean those out so that way when we go to put our hardware in, we don't have to worry about it getting caught. So I'm going to spray a little bit of penetrating oil up in there and just take my wire brush and clean out the threads. I'll do this on both sides. All right, now it's time to build our trailer hitch. We are going to have our center section and then 2 outer arms here that are actually going to bracket up to our frame rail. Now we want to make sure we have these in the correct orientation, otherwise our hitch is not going to fit. So if we look, we've got more of a slanted section for our driver's side, and we want to make sure that this L bracket right here is facing so that we're going to be hitting the bottom and inner side of our frame rail. Now on the other side, it's a little bit different. We've got a straight shot right out, but we have this smaller section right here, which is going to match up with our holes up above the cross tube. You can see just below it. So you might need an extra set of hands just to kind of help hold it, position it while you're getting it all bolted up. But we're going to be using our 3/8 cap head screws, or bolts, sorry, and then some flange nuts. So I'll start with this side here. I think it's kind of awkward to do either way. So like I said, you might want to have a couple other people. We're going to do bolts from the outside in with our flange nut on the inside. Get that started. Once we get a couple of bolts in, it'll help support the weight a bit more. And then we'll just repeat this over on the other side. Now we're going to use a 9/16 socket and wrench, or 14mm if you don't have standard. And we'll just snug each one of these down. And then we'll come back and torque them as well. All right, now before we set our hitch up into place, I did want to kind of just go over the hardware. So we're going to have some horizontal bolts that's going to go through our frame rail. That's going to be our 1/2-inch bolts here. We're going to have a flat washer that's going to go on the bolt side. Once we pass through that frame rail, we're going to put on another flat washer and then our lock nut. And then for the vertical bolts, for the 2 bolt holes that are going to be going into the weld nuts in the frame rail, we're going to have our M10 bolts, a split lock washer, a flat washer, and then that'll just thread right into that weld nut. So at this point, you're definitely going to want to grab a second set of hands because this is a little bit heavy, and trying to hold it while also passing through your hardware can be a bit of a challenge, especially on our passenger side because there's a heat shield in the way right here, which is going to try and fight us the whole way that we try and go here. So I'm going to do this without the hitch in place just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing. So once I get the hitch up in there, we'll get our bolt here, and the washer is going to catch on our heat shield. So what I like to do is push it all the way to the end, past the heat shield, and then try and force my bolt through. But you can see even the bolt is scraping against our heat shield. They don't want you to cut it. You can still have it there. You're just going to have to kind of force your way through. You may want to take just a hammer and a punch and kind of push it the rest of the way. But I'm going to grab somebody else, we'll get our hitch up in place, and then we can get our hardware in. Now I got a second set of hands here. I got Scott, and he's going to help me lift these up into place. And as we're doing that, we can start trying to pass through our hardware to help hold up the hitch. Try and get this one in, let's see. There we go. All right, I got that back one holding, so at this point I'm going to use a punch or a pry bar or something to kind of push that in a little bit more because, like I said, I'm catching that heat shield. It's just not wanting to let me pass through. All right, now we'll throw on our flat washers and our lock nuts on both the passenger and driver's side. I get the M10 bolts into here, but you may have to move this around. You can see we're kind of blocking the hole right now, so I need to shift the whole hitch back and get that better lined up. There we go. See our other side. Looks like we're good. So I'm going to grab those bolts and we'll get our nuts on here. I like to tighten these ones up first, have it draw up to the frame, and then I'll tighten down the side ones, have it kind of stretch it out to fully seal it up against the frame rail. All right, I've got all my hardware snugged down. Now it's time to come back with our torque wrench. Now I don't know if I said this before, but with our M10 bolts, we're going to be using that 17mm socket. On the 1/2-inch bolts, we're going to be using our 19mm or 3/4 inch. With all of our hardware properly torqued, now all we have left is to reinstall our rubber isolators so that our exhaust can be supported once again, remove our cam strap, and then we need to put our spare tire back on and reel that back all the way up. We've also got some 4-pole wiring here that we installed for our neighbor, so we'll also want to throw that on our trailer hitch, keep that up off the ground. We don't want that to drag and then tear up our connector, and we got to replace it. We'll also want to reinstall that plastic cover with those 3 plastic push pins and then 2 plastic nuts that'll go onto these 2 studs. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the B&W Trailer Hitch Receiver here on our 2023 Hyundai Palisade. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer hitch receiver for your Hyundai Palisade, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.